Ron Paul. I'm a congressman from Texas, serving in my 10th term. I am the champion of the Constitution.
I'm officially announcing that I am a candidate for president in the Republican primary.
We talked about a humble foreign policy, no nation building, don't police the world. That is a conservative, it's a Republican, it's a pro-American, it follows the founding fathers, and besides, it follows the Constitution.
I think it is the acceptance just recently that we now promote preemptive war. I do not believe that's part of the American tradition. We in the past have always declared war in the defense of our liberties or go to aid somebody, but now we have accepted the principle of preemptive war. We have rejected the just war theory of Christianity. And now, tonight, we hear that we're not even willing to remove from the table a preemptive nuclear strike against the country that has done no harm to us directly and is no threat to our national security. I mean, we have to come to our senses about this issue of war and preemption and go back to traditions and our Constitution and defend our liberties and defend our rights, but not to think that we can change the world by force of arms and to start wars.
Thank you. The freedom message brings us together. It doesn't divide us. I believe that when we overdo our military aggressiveness, what it does, it actually weakens our national defense. I mean, we stood up to the Soviets. They had 40,000 nuclear weapons. Now we're fretting day in and day night about third world countries that have no army, navy, or air force, and we're getting ready to go to war.
This basic principle and expression of individual liberty, which has survived 800 years, greatly influenced the writing of our Constitution and our common law heritage. Today, we hardly hear a whimper, either from the American people or a stone silent U.S. government as our cherished liberties are eradicated. Instead, we have a government that deliberately orchestrates needless fear and makes people insecure enough to ignore the reality of their lost liberties.
This whole notion of life not being valuable just is something I was never able to accept.
No nation building, no policing of the world. Republicans were elected to end the Korean War. The Republicans were elected to end the Vietnam War. There's a strong tradition of being anti-war in the Republican Party. It is the constitutional position. It is the advice of the founders to follow a non-interventionist foreign policy. Stay out of entangling alliances. Be friends with countries. Negotiate and talk with them and trade with them.
Government destroys jobs, the market creates jobs, so the government isn't going to be expected to create the jobs. They have to change the environment. But you can't do that unless you understand where the depression, recessions come from, and you can't understand that unless you know where the bubbles come from. I've been arguing this case for 20 years and warning about bubbles and housing bubbles and NASDAQ bubbles, and a lot of other economists have been doing the same thing. Until we understand that, you can't solve the problem. You have to deal with the Federal Reserve System, you have to deal with free markets, and you have to deal with the tax program and the regulatory system. Then you can get your jobs, because the people will create the jobs, not the government.
I would work very hard to protect the privacy of American citizens, being very, very cautious about warrantless searches, and I would guarantee that I would never abuse habeas corpus.
What if the American people learn the truth? That our foreign policy has nothing to do with national security, that it never changes from one administration to the next. What if war and preparation for war is a racket serving the special interests?
You know, the founders were very well educated, and they came to the conclusion that individual rights were very important. And they talked about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and they believed in property rights. And I'm a strong believer in that. I believe in natural rights. I believe in God-given rights. I don't believe any rights come to us from our government.